So I know we just did 6 weeks on Daniel, and that series is technically done, but I have this terrible habit of extending things by a week by kind of a bit of a appendix or a postlude to a series, and that's what we're doing today. It's not in the book of Daniel, but I feel like this talk kind of links back to that series, because I find it's useful to kind of step back from the 6 chapters, 6 weeks that we looked at, and see this story in the context of a person's life and the bigger context. So what I'm thinking along the lines of is, okay, the story was they live in Judah, they get carried away. So a good person gets carried away into selfishness. Daniel, the conscience, works his thing of showing what his value is. He shows what he can do, and through the course of this process, reforming the internal and the external self, a new conscience, a new ego comes forward, King Darius, and at the end, things are pretty good. King Darius is still subject to being fooled and to being tricked, but overall things are okay. Well, what's next in the big story of the children of Israel? Well, before long, they get released and they get sent back to the Holy Land. Well, when they get sent back to the Holy Land, what do they have to do? Well, they got to get set up again, right? They got to basically reconquer the land. They've got to take over Jerusalem. They've got to get the temple up and running. They've got to get their whole system of rules and sacrifices and religion, bring it back online. They have got to start over. And I think about this as like, well, this is kind of how our life is, isn't it? You know, we have an evil. Maybe it's selfishness, or maybe it's control, or maybe it's whatever it is that we're working on. And we get, we get carried off into it. Eventually we can, through our help of our conscience, work our way back out of it. And what do you have to do? Well, you got to reconquer that territory. You've got to take your spiritual growth seriously. You've got to take your progress seriously. You've got to say, well, all right, well, I've been released from Babylon. I got to get things back up and running. And so when I think about that, it brings me to the story about the Gibeonites. Because King Darius, he was fooled, right? He was tricked by the governors, the satraps, fooled into saying, I'll make this declaration that you're God. Okay. Well, if we go back to the other end of this cycle where Joshua comes through and they cross over the Jordan, they're starting to conquer territory, they get in the situation where the Gibeonites come up and they say, hey, we're from a far off place, make a treaty with us, be our friends. And they're fooled. Just as King Darius was fooled, Joshua's fooled. And I think there's lessons in here for us, because the Lord's very clear. You've got to go out and conquer the land. Let nobody and nothing stand in your way. Well, when he says conquer the land, what are those enemies, right? Well, who are those enemies? Well, they're the evils that we do in our life, or the false beliefs we have. They are, in a very real sense, the evil spirits that are barking in our own mind. Conquer these enemies. Wipe them all out. We get a list, right? Who's there? The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, the Philistines. I mean, there's heaps of them. They've all got to go. So how do we recognize them? Because they're all in our way. They're all in our way. How do we recognize them? How do you see them? Well, you're supposed to go to the Word, go to the Lord, consult, but as we see in our story, the Gibeonites tricked them. The Gibeonites tricked them into thinking they were friendly when they weren't. And that's kind of the theme of today, of spiritual imposters, where it's what's something in our life that presents itself as something good, but isn't. King Darius, make this pact. You are our God. Nobody worships anybody. Sounds like a great idea. Yes, I like that quite a bit. Thank you very much. The Gibeonites do a deception as well, but it's done differently. It says, we're your friends. Make a pact with us. So here, let's sit back, enjoy the story. It's in your order of service if you wish to follow along. Joshua chapter 9 is what this is. Now when the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, the kings in the hill country, in the western foothills, and along the entire coast of the Mediterranean Sea, as far as Lebanon, the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they came together to wage war against Joshua and Israel. However, when the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they resorted to a ruse. They sent as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and mended. They put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. Then they went to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal and said to him and the Israelites, "We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us." The Israelites said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you live near us. How can we make a treaty with you?" "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. But Joshua asked, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. And our elders and all those living in our country said to us, 'Take provisions for your journey. Go and meet them and say to them, "We are your servants. Make a treaty with us." The bread of ours was warm when we packed it at home on the day we left to come to you. But now see how dry and how moldy it is. And these wineskins we filled were new, but see how cracked they are, and our clothes and sandals are worn out by the very long journey." The Israelites sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the ministers of the assembly ratified it by oath. So just pause there for a second. We'll come back to read the last bit of the story in a minute. Think about this scenario here, right? That land, that Holy Land, is like us. We have the evils that are inside of us, and that we're trying to fight these things so we can be good people and go to heaven. There are enemies in the land, and you can think about it. Well, they're going to be cities, fortified places. They're going to be small groups, big groups. It's a complex network, right? And here we have a picture of some evils that look like our friends. That's what these guys are. Think about just some examples here. What are these? Well, selfishness is a good one, right? Selfishness is a good one. Yeah, I can do this, and it's going to help me, and it's going to work out great for everybody else too. How about when we hang out with people who don't bring out the best in us? "Oh, but I like hanging out with so-and-so. We have a good time. Yeah, it might bring out too much of this, that, or the other in me, and, it doesn't always, not great, but look, we're friends." Controlling other people. It's a great one, right? This will work out great if everybody does what I say. We can do self-justification, greediness. Well, if I have more money, that's going to be great. I need more. And yeah, you got to have some money, but you got to be careful not to be too crazy. There are lots of these kind of enemies that put themselves forward as our friends. But look out. You can see that maybe they're dressed a certain way that gives you a clue. They go to Joshua and say, "We want to serve you. We're not stopping you from taking over the land. We're not against you. Come on, we're not in the way. It's going to be all right." Now, Joshua seems to have a clue. He doesn't believe them right away. He says, well, how do I know where you're from? How do I know that you're not from right here? Well, they're smart. They've got things to show them. What is the first thing they showed him? Bread. Okay? Well, bread, think about Holy Supper. Bread and wine, good and truth. All right? So bread represents goodness. We've got some left over here, right here. Look at it. You can tell it's old. It's got some mold on it. It was fresh baked when we left. So when you have these spiritual imposters saying, hey, this is what we have for you is good. Look at it. It's bread. It's good. You just got to ignore the mold on the side. Yeah, it's a little dry, a little crusty. Just get that knife. Just cut that mold right off. This, what we have, is fine. We produce good things in your life. That's what they're saying. We produce good things in your life. Right? The Lord says to us, thou shalt not fear, right? Do not be fearful. Be courageous. Sometimes we say, oh, well, a little bit of fear inside of me is pretty good, because if I'm fearful, nothing bad will happen to me, because I'll spot it. I'll see it. Nothing bad's going to happen. Same thing about, kind of the control. If I'm in control, everything will be all right. When I'm selfish, I can have what I want and nobody gets hurt. Well, that's this kind of bread. It's moldy, it's dry, it's not really what it appears to be. It's not really bringing good into life. It's tainted. The next thing they show them is the wine skin. It's not the wine itself, it's the wine skin. So it's something that contains truth. And because it's wine, it's not just truth with a lowercase t. This is like capital T truth. This is divine truth. This is the big stuff. This is something that's going to really teach you a lot. And that's what sometimes false ideas will say to us. Oh, look, listen to me. I can teach you a lot. And sometimes it appears in our life as, hey, listen to me. I really know a lot. If I follow myself, if I follow my feelings, boy, I'm gonna have some true ideas. And it's the same set of basic examples. If I control others, if I take care of myself first, then everything will be all right. In the business world, perhaps, think about it. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I have got to fight to stay on top. And if I don't do my business this way, I'm going to get taken over by this person, or this person's going to get the promotion. I've got to do it what it takes. Right? If I worry enough, then I can prevent bad things from happening. This is the kind of the wineskin it's old, it's broken, it's got patches and things like that in it, and we're saying, this is the truth. This is the truth. Last thing that they showed him was garments. Think about, why did you put on clothes today? What do clothes do for us in our life? Well, they protect us from the elements, right? Protect us from the excessive heat and wind and rain and those kind of things. Clothes can be used to show identity. People wear uniforms. You go to Woolworths, Kohl's, you go to any store, they all have a uniform on. If you go, police have uniforms. Going off a plane, the flight attendants wear uniforms, and they show an identity, and they show then they protect us. So when these Gibeonites show the garments, well, what are they doing? They're saying, well, look, these garments, these clothes, these things that we have, they will serve you. They will protect you. They will help you have an identity. And that's true. When you start doing things, they become part of your identity. So they said, yeah, we'll make a treaty with you. We'll make a treaty with you. And the irony of this story and them making a treaty is that they just had this lesson. They're going and they cross over the Jordan, they take out Jericho. That seems to go pretty well. Then they take this little town called Ai. They go attack, send a small army, and they get defeated. They're going, what? Joshua falls on the ground. Lord, why'd you bring us out of Egypt to kill us now? Oh my goodness. Joshua, Lord says to Joshua, get up. You guys messed up the Jericho thing. You took some stuff you weren't supposed to. Figure it out, then try again. They should have learned from the experience they just had. That they got to consult the Lord. And what is the thing that they don't do with this with the Gibeonites is they don't consult the Lord. So, back to our story. So 3 days, which is verse 16 on the top of your second page. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that they were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites sent out, and on the third day came to their cities, Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the ministers of the assembly had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the ministers, but all the ministers answered, we have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live so that God's wrath will not fall on us for breaking the oath we swore to them. Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers in service of the whole assembly. So the minister's promise to them was kept. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, why did you deceive us, saying, we live a long way from you, when you actually live near us? You are now under a curse. You will never be released from service as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God. They answered Joshua, your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and wipe out all of its inhabitants from before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do to us whatever seems good and right to you. So Joshua saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. That day he made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers for the assembly to provide for the needs of the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose. And that is what they are to this very day. So on the back, Secrets of Heaven tells us about what the Gibeonites represent. It says, in addition to drawers of water in the Jewish church represented those who constantly seek to know truths, but to no other end than just knowing them, and who consequently pay no attention to their purpose. Such persons were rated among the lowest of all. The Gibeonites represented them. Regarding foreigners, the law of the land was laid down that if they would accept peace and open their gates, they would become tributary and serve. The Lord's kingdom is such that everyone, no matter who or what kind of person, must perform a use. In his kingdom, the Lord looks to nothing else than use. Even those in hell have to perform a use, though the uses they do perform are the lowest of all. What we're getting at here with these spiritual imposters is that they've got us perform a use. You're going to have these guys slip through the cracks. I mean, this is a story that's supposed to be putting us on guard and saying, I'm going to be super vigilant and nothing's going to get past me. And the Lord's saying, well, it's going to happen. Something's going to get past. Something's going to deceive you. It's going to show itself as good. It's going to show itself, and it's just going to happen. You'll have forgotten to consult. You'll bring something in. But what we have to do with these things is make them serve. That's what Secrets of Heaven is saying, is that everything has to serve a purpose. Joshua did not go back and wipe them out. He didn't. He didn't go back and say, all right, off with their heads. And I think that's a valuable lesson for us. Okay, all right. I've made friends with this, but now I'm going to make it serve. I'm going to make it serve. Think about ways this might show up in your life in small ways. Laziness, right? It's okay to be a little bit lazy, but maybe that laziness can serve you in some ways of just recovering a bit. The greed. Maybe that can serve you by pushing you to work a little bit harder at your job and say, all right, well, I'm going to do a better job because I want to make more money. Maybe a little fear can be made to serve and say, all right, well, I'm afraid of going to a bad place, or I'm afraid I'm not going to go to a good heaven. I need to work on my regeneration a little bit more. They just don't have to be big things in your life as far as the way these guys impact you. But you can be mindful of saying, okay, I have this thing that is in me it's not what the Lord wants. He doesn't really want me to worry about the future. He doesn't want me to worry about money. He doesn't want me to worry about some of these things. But as long as I've got it, I'm going to focus that energy onto a good purpose. I'm not going to necessarily wipe it out. I'm going to focus it on something good. And that's the point of this story, is to take these spiritual imposters and put them to work. Amen.